everybody. Now, you can probably tell that I've just got this new little intro piece into these videos. I hope you like it. I know it's not much, but I just thought I'd add a little bit more flair to my videos and give a little bit more professionalism. Simply because, I don't work for a full-blown digital agency. I am a digital agency myself, but I'm one solo man at the moment, so I can only do what I can around my normal job. I actually work another job as well. So let me know what you think. It's just a little bit of music and a little bit of pictures. That's all it is at this stage. That's okay. It's better than nothing. Anyway, let's get on to the next topic, and that topic was going to be dynamic forms. However, what I thought I should do instead, before we get into that, is you really need to understand what structural directives are in Angular 2. Now, there's only 3 of them, but it's important to understand the lifecycle of how they work, so that when you create components that work within these structural directives, you can anticipate what's going to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a whole new project. And the reason why I'm doing this is because the code I'm about to demonstrate, I don't really want in my current project. There will be some switches and some ifs, which you'll learn in a minute, that are in there. In fact, there's already an ngIf in my code. But I wanted to keep this matter separate because I'm going to be testing or showing you things that I don't necessarily need. So what I'm going to do is I'm in my Angular 2 folder. I'm going to create a new project. So ng new, and I'm just going to call it Structural Directives, like so. It might take a few seconds to start up just because I haven't run the ng command since the last time I did a tutorial. It does take a bit. Come on. Okay. So now it's going to install the packages using no package manager. So this will take a little bit as well. And you guys have seen all this before. Now, just so you don't forget, you can go to my GitHub site at the moment. Now, it's not going to have this lesson in the GitHub repository because it's not related to my project. But I've still got this Angular 2 tutorial GitHub series that you can pull down, which has all my previous stuff in it. And it's going to continue to have any future stuff I add to that project. It's just for this particular lesson, it was really silly to try and add in these ifs and switches and all that to the project, just because I was going to do it organically anyway throughout the whole thing. So, but the things I wanted to show you, I didn't really want to include in the project, so I didn't. But you can still pull down what I've done so far. So we've got everything. Packages are still installing. While we're waiting for that, I've got a completely separate Explorer window open now. I'm going to open the folder. And I'm going to come into Structural Directives, which I've already created. I'm going to load the source folder. I'm going to open that. So as before, you've seen all this before. We've got a blank app folder. We've got the main. We've got the index. We've got everything that we need, right? Now, I'm not going to be worrying about presentation in this particular project. I'm just going to be focusing on a couple of things. So the first thing I want to do is I want to actually go and create, once this is done, a new component. Once it decides it wants to finish installing, just still installing packages, which is finally. Alright, we've got all the node packages pulled down now, so let's just quickly check that everything is working by going ngserve. As you can see over here at the moment, I've got the 4200 loaded, ready to go. So as soon as this says it's ready to go, I'll just refresh and we should get the app works default skeleton message that you get with the current Angular CLI. And this other window down here, guys, is basically now I've got this running. I'm going to be typing in the rest of the ng commands in this window because I get annoyed when What's this? You have to be inside the angular-cli project in order to use the serve command. Oh, yes. Of course. At the moment, I'm outside the folder. And that's because I created the project and didn't actually move into the folder. I should always remember to do that. This is what happens when you don't do everything in practice and you do everything live. You make lots of mistakes, and everybody who watches it can see it unfold, and they know that I'm human. And you know, if you ever make mistakes in your real coding life, you're human too. You know, so this is a good thing. Finally, okay, now I've got something loaded. So if I come over here, we should get the app works screen. We do. So what I want to do, guys, is I want to actually create a component. And the reason why I want to create a component is it's going to be something very, very small. It'll be just something that displays a message. Alright, it doesn't need anything special because it's going to be more about the directives that we create around this component, and we'll see how things flow and work around these directives. It's better for me just to get started. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a new component. So just quickly check that I'm not in the right place. So I'm glad I checked that. And I'm pretty sure I can just go straight to source from here. So now I'll go ngg component, and I want to create a component. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to put hello message, hello dash message. That'll do. So this will go and create a hello message feature, which is totally all good, and it should register that. Right. So we'll just so that we can get this up and going. I'll come into my app folder, I'll go to my hello message, I'll just quickly grab the selector, so which is app hello message, and just quickly confirm there's a bit of text. I mean, that's fine, I don't care at this point what it says. We're going to be doing some stuff in here just to show certain things, and I'm going to come down to my main app component, TS. We said we've got a component file, and in here, instead of having the title that says app works, we can have that, but then underneath here, what I want to do is I want to add the hello message, right? And this is just to get started. And then what I'll do is I'll let it reload, and we can see the app message works, right? Now, the first thing I want to do before we get into these directives is I want to show a little bit of the life cycle. So at the moment, when you first create a component, you would have seen this a number of times, but you see this on ngOnInit, right? And what this ngOnInit is basically, you know, the component is done, it's been loaded into the environment, and once it's loaded into the environment, it tries to initialize itself before it renders the information onto the screen. So at this point, you can get things like data from a web server, you know, all those kinds of things. So you get to all your data, you collate your information, and you ensure that you've got all the data necessary to render the view or the HTML under here. Right. So normally you would inject a service. The service would then be called inside this ngInit. But what I'm going to do for now is I just want to put console.logs, and then I put hello message component loaded, like so. And so when I actually go back to the code and I look at the console, you'll see hello message component loaded, right? And that's pretty standard. I mean, we know we just load the component. If I refresh the page, you're going to see it's loaded, right? You want to say, oh, that's pretty cool. We know that we're loading it. Now, this is very, very important that we understand that this initializes. I'm also going to show you how or where to trigger a destroy. So when we use structural directives, what actually happens is if a piece of code is not meant to be displayed on the screen, or it gets toggled on and off, like the display of it gets toggled on and off, what actually happens behind the scenes is that an app component is destroyed and then recreated, and then destroyed and then recreated based on what toggle state you're at. So first thing I'm just going to do here very quickly is, once I find where in my code, 1 second guys. Actually, just give me a moment. I'm just going to pause this for a second. Okay, and I'm back. Sorry about that. So what I was looking for is I was trying to remember what the name of the destroy method, implementation was. It's just on destroy. So in here, where we're implementing on init, we now need to also implement an on destroy. So we go on destroy, like so. And then what this requires is for us to go down here and go ng on destroy, like so, right? And then here I can put console.log hello message component destroyed, right? So what are we testing for here? Well, if I go and I let it refresh, are we going to see the destroyed message? No, we don't. And that's because this is loaded, right? Now, if we want to see the error message, what we actually need to do is we need to create a flag that actually removes this from the DOM. And this is where the first structural directive comes in. And the first structural directive I want to talk about is the ngIf, right? So if I come over to my app component for a moment, what I'm going to do is not only am I going to have a title, I'm going to have a hide, what am I going to call it? Hide hello message. I have to set to false, right? And then what I'm going to do is inside the app component, just above the message, I'm going to put, and this is not the best idea to do, but that's fine. We have a checkbox, and we're going to have ng model. Whoops, I always forget to put the bound that like that. Ng model is equal to, what did I just call it? I called it hide hello message. So I'm going to call it that. And that's it, and then I'll just put a little message after this saying hide hello message, or we'll just put toggle hello message, like so, right? Now I'll just make sure that they actually loads a checkbox, right? And also what I should also check is that the state of hide hello message changes from true to false, and so on and so forth. This is just some quick sanity checking, just to make sure that, so this is false, if I toggle it, it says true, false, true, false, false, and it's there, true, false. So that's working, so I don't need to do anything else there. Now, there's a bit of discussion around this ngIf directive. Now, the default choice is just to put a div here, like so, or you can even do this. You can go to the component. I believe you can do this. I can't remember if I can, but I can go in. Whoops. It's got to be a star ngIf, like that, equals. And in this case, we want it to display when not hide hello message, right? Like so. In fact, I should change this to hide hello message. That makes more sense. So by default, hide hello message is set to false. So as a result, this ngIf, right, is going to show. Right. So down here we still have hello message component loaded, right? However, now that I've got that ngIf in place, if I click this, right, the message disappears, and on top of that, we get this hello message component destroyed. So what does this mean, right? This means that the component that was created is now not only missing, like hidden from view, but it's also destroyed by the application, which means that any data that you fetch for the component to be loaded, any of that stuff, it has to be re-initialized again, and that's where you do it in the onInit, part of the component. And really, I should be calling this initialized, not loaded. Right? So in here, this is where you initialize stuff. This is where you destroy any critical components, things like that. Destroy is not used that often, but this was just more to indicate that a component is actually in fact destroyed. So that, if you ever have a situation where you have some critical stuff that you want to do when the component is destroyed, just say you want to quickly save what is currently saved to the component to a database or something before it disappears. You can do it on destroy, and if you're getting information, then you're always getting it on it. Now, this is okay. However, sometimes you just want to hide something, right? You just want to hide the information. Well, if you think about it, it's pretty easy to get around this, right? You just simply do not use the ngIf, right? You would use something like this instead, right? So we'll just remove this for the moment. And I'm just going to put a comment above here, just so I don't lose it. Right? And instead of doing that, there's no attribute here. So what you would have to do is go div, and then maybe put a div under it, like so. And then on here, you can go style dot display. So we're heading to the display property of style for this particular div, and we can say not. So we go not hide hello message. Then we can say it's equal to block. Otherwise, it's equal to none. I hope that makes sense. So what we're doing here is we're using the same property to do a normal attribute bind. We're saying the display property on this div, when hide hello message is set to false, right? In other words, we want to show it, then therefore we should be showing the block, otherwise we're not showing it. And let's see what happens here. So if I now come back over and I refresh, you'll see hello message component is initialized. That's because it's the first line of the page. However, when I click this, the message disappears. But see, strangely enough down here, the component isn't destroyed. So when I click on this again, it also doesn't initialize, because you haven't destroyed the component, you've just hidden it from view. And that's a very important distinction to understand with Angular 2. A lot of people, when they first create components, they almost think that ngIf is going to have the component stay alive, just hidden from view. Well, that's not actually correct. Okay, and that's one very important distinction to understand about all these structural directives, because each one, it's like a server-side, like if you've ever worked with server-side programming and you have conditional logic in your server-side code, it's like doing that. It's like hiding it completely. It's gone, right? It does not show up in the DOM or anything like that. The application remembers how to render it. Like when you load the component, the JavaScript behind the scenes knows what it looks like and knows how to fetch the network resources, because it's just a component, right? It just re-initializes it. That's all it does, right? And then adds it to a collection of components on the actual page. But that's the first thing I wanted to cover about structural directives, was that, because it's something a lot of people tend to not understand. Right? So with all that said, the other thing I could talk about, and maybe actually I will mention it very quickly, with this star directive type thing, what it's actually doing behind the scenes is it using an element called a template element, right? So what you can do is, instead of using this star ngIf template, so I'm going to actually undo this, right? And I'm going to put this back for a minute, right? Just to confirm that we're back to square one and this still works. I'm just going to quickly run it again, just to ensure. Like so. Yep, still works. That's good. So what this does behind the scenes, it's actually a shorthand version of writing something like this. In fact, sorry, we originally had this on here, didn't we? We had it on that like that, right? But it's a shorthand version of doing something like this. Right? So this is element called template, and when used inside of normal HTML, it's basically display none. So it never ever shows up at all because we don't actually have, I believe there's no HTML5 tag for it. So by default, normally it doesn't do anything. There are a lot of CSS engines out, CSS that's written out there that might pick this up, but for the most part, you know, it's an element that would not be understood, so therefore it wouldn't show anything. That's normal CSS and normal HTML. But inside of Angular, this is saying I want to create a template. Right? I want whatever's inside of here to be displayed under the conditions of this ngIf attribute. So it's a directive of itself, right? It's a template component directive type thing. So once you do that, if you come in here and go app hello message, right, and do the same here, what should happen is exactly the same thing that's up here, right? Let's see if it does that. So we come in, we refresh, and so far we can see that the component is there. If we click this, they both disappear. And if you look down here, we've seen 2 components initialized, but we've also seen 2 destroyed, right? And then when we click it again, we get 2 components that are initialized once more. So this whole star concept is basically a shorthand notation for writing this. Okay? Now, I've never seen, or I've never written an Angular 2 application with this in it. Normally I just use the star. But this is just saying, this is a template, or we're going to be changing some structure. So therefore we're going to template out that structure, and then we're going to have the conditions of an if. Right? And this is the same for all other structural directives. They all operate the same using this template concept. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to move to something else now. So what I'm going to do to demonstrate the next structural directive, which happens to be a what's the other one? There's switch, and there's one more, which I've got to remember off the top of my head. Not ngStyle, ngFor, right? So ngFor is another one, which is a template, right? So the same as this one. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to create a quick array in here. I'm not going to spend too much time, not in this one, in the app component, because we don't need to see the lifecycle for this one. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to create an array. I'm going to go messages, and we'll go equals an array, and inside of here we'll put 1, 2, 3, whoops, and that's not how I write it. How do I write this again? In fact, this should be string array. Oops. Sorry, I know what I'm doing. It should work, yeah. So I'm going to have message 1, message 2, message 3, like so. And once again, I'll show you the differences between using the template, just so you start to understand what happens. So we're gonna now go back to our component, and under here I'm gonna create a div, because basically what I want to have happen is I want to create a div for each array element that's inside of that array. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go div. Now the first way to do it is the one with the star. So we go ngFor, and then we come in let. Right. So we're going to create a variable for an individual item here. So we've got that array. We're now grabbing an individual item. So we're going to go message of, right, and then the name of the. In fact, I just called it messages. And yes, guys, my memory is not good. So we got that, right? And then inside of here, we're going to create, right? We're going to create the interpolation. We're just going to display the message, right? So now we'll come back over and let the page refresh here, and we should get 3 messages, one after the other. See, and if we look at this quickly, you'll see this whole content thing, and they're all different content attributes. Now, I'll explain more later on what all these attributes are, but they're all to assist with CSS. They're not, it doesn't look so easy to understand on first hand, but what it actually is if you look at the template binder here, let's see how you've got this ngFor of, and then it's got 3 options. I'm going to show you what that means in terms of templates. This is actually the template that's kind of being created, right? This is the template with a binding of ngIf. This ngReflect is something else that they append to the front of all these things, but the reality thing is you're looking at is the ngFor of, and then the value. So it's template ngFor of value, all right? So we come back to the code, and once again, I'm going to create a template. So again, template representing, something we're going to modify internally. Now, this is a little bit trickier for the ngFor. I've got to try and remember how this is written. I did see this because it's kind of, you've got a let here. Actually, guys, just give me one moment so I can just quickly refresh my brain on this. Okay, sorry guys, I remember now. So what it is the representation of this is ngFor like that, and then there is a let, and then the name of what you're going to call it. So it's let message. It's really weird syntax, and then you got ngFor of. That's the actual directive for the template. And you go equals, and then you go messages. Alright, it's really weird syntax, and this is why we do it the star way, because doing it this way is not the best way. And then we come into here and we can go div, because remembering that the template goes away, so inside the div tag we just go once again message. Now if I've done this right, we should get the exact same behavior as the one above, so we'll just see what happens. And we do, we get the same behavior. And so that's pretty much the 2 main structural directives that are there. The third one is a switch statement. So this one, for whatever reason, it's a little bit different. What happens is it's actually written as a attribute. And once again, I'm just quickly checking my notes here. Got to remember off the top of my head these things. So, this is what you do. Okay? So, I'm going to remove this template one because I think it's ugly and horrible. And I definitely like this option better. This whole star concept. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create inside of my, not my hello component, I'm going to throw that away now because I don't need that anymore. What I'm going to do is under here, I'm going to have export enum, and we're going to go, I don't know, car type, right? And because I'm from Australia, I'm going to put Holden as number 1. If anyone knows what a Holden is, they might not. We'll go forward. Number 2. we'll go, I've got a Hyundai at the moment, so I'll go Hyundai. And don't laugh, I can't, yeah, that's how I spell it, yep. I couldn't spell Hyundai for a second there. We'll go Mazda. We'll go Toyota. These are all the ones that are mostly in Australia, so if yours are all different, I don't care. That's for you to be concerned with. And then what I'm going to do is up here, I'm going to choose another property. I'm going to call it car type. We'll just go equals car type dot Ford, we'll say for now. And I'll chop and change this. So what I do now is, we know that these have numbers. So this has the number 1. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So in our code here, what I'm going to do is for a div tag, we'll say, we're just going to do a bunch of divs. So div, and then we'll go ngSwitch. Now I could use this here, but I find that cheating. So we'll just do it my way, ngSwitch. That's just IntelliSense to speed stuff up. And then I'm going to base it on the, what was it, car type that I had. So based on that car type. Now for Angular 2, this is actually going to be numeric and not actually a string value. In some languages, what will actually be returned here would be the name of the actual enum value rather than the actual number. But for Angular, it is the name. Now, I believe I can do it this way. So I'm going to add another div here. And what we do now is we have the directive again of ng, right? Switch. So not switch, case. This is an individual case now. So this is the template, right? So you've got the choice, which is your ngSwitch. So this is saying, all right, we have this variable that we need to create a distinction on, but we're not actually changing the behavior or saying changing the structure of the markup at this point. What goes from here onwards will be dictating the structure of the markup, and that's why you don't see the star in front of this one. You see it in front of the case instead. So for the case, we need to specify the condition, and the condition in our case will be 0. Right? So this is the Holden, and we're going to say inside of here, you drive a Holden, so Aussie, mate. Alright, and then we're going to do this 4 more times. 2, 3, 4, and we're going to change the values of these. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. You drive a Ford, so American. I think it's American. You drive, I think I made it Hyundai's the Hyundai. Cheapo like me. What else? We said Mazda. I think that's a girl's car. Toyota. Good luck affording petrol, because they're usually pretty big machines. So let's save that. So by this now we have all the switch cases. What we should start seeing is that we chose Ford, so we should say you drive a Ford, so American mate. So I'll come back over here. You can see here we've got you drive a Ford, so American mate. Right? Now I'm an Aussie man, so I'm going to drive a Holden. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change this to Holden, and I'm going to save. And I'm going to come over again, and this should change the message. You drive a Holden, so I'm Australian, so Aussie mate. And once again, I'm going to come in, and I'm now going to change it to a Hyundai. Oops. It says cheapo like me. Right, so these are all the things I've written in each div. Mazda. Now, I don't truly think of Mazda as a girl's car. I just try and think of something to say. So I think that's a girl's car. It's just only because I know of a couple of girls who drive a Mazda. Okay, so that's why I said I think it's a girl's car. I don't know much about cars, to be honest with you. Toyota. I did drive a Toyota Sydney once, which was a beautiful drive. But the one thing is, I found it was very hungry on petrol. So that's why I wrote good luck affording petrol. So yeah, I think for the most part, that's what I wanted to show. This is a shorter tutorial, and basically I wanted to do this now before I did dynamic forms, because dynamic forms are going to be very much dependent on if and switches. Because if you think about it, you got a text box, then you got a radio button, then you've got a drop-down list, and all these different type of concepts or different controls. And you're going to be controlling what gets loaded by what based on the type of control you're trying to build, right? For each controller to the form. So that's why I thought it was important to start here. They're the three, as I said, they're the three built-in structural directives that we have in Angular 2. So remember them: ngIf, ngFor, which these two you've already seen before. ngSwitch is a new one that I thought I'd speak about now. And just keep in mind, the ngSwitch attribute itself is not actually a structural directive, but in fact the ngSwitch case is, because it's the one that has the template under the hood. Now, I can quickly show you this, which is, now that we have the ngSwitch, what I can do instead, and I'm going to do it just for one, because I think you can do it this way. Please don't hold me to this, because I haven't done this before, so this will be new for me. But I believe if I do this, right, this should be exactly the same as doing what I just did, right? So if I go back in and I change this back to Holden, right, and save, and I come in and let it refresh, it didn't work. Okay, so what did I do wrong here? There's actually nothing wrong there. It's just not shown by the template. Well, maybe it is. Hang on, I definitely want to verify this. I was pretty sure. Maybe a template is here. I didn't think it was. Let me save this. Sorry guys, I don't want to give you misinformation. And no, that's definitely not right, because there's no provider for an ngSwitch. Yeah, so that's definitely not the template. Strange. I'll have to follow up on that one. Because I was pretty sure that the template could be wrapped around each individual item, and you just put the ngSwitch case on it, and it would show you the same thing, like you did for the for. Oh, it probably requires more attributes like this one up here. It's very hard to understand. Maybe if I just quickly come in and I look at the actual switch statement itself, might be able to get an idea of what it's supposed to look like. ngSwitch case. Oh, that's right, yeah, we don't, so I know the situation. I believe what I'm supposed to do here, and I should know this already, instead of doing it, I go ngSwitch case, like so, equals 0, because we don't use the stars. See, making mistakes in a live video, well, not a live video to you, but a live video to me, and then I'll just remove this. But this is how we learn, guys. You know, sometimes we learn from mistakes. So now let's give this a shot. And it looks like it's broken again. I spelt it wrong. Switch. One more time, and there you go. So that now it works. So yeah, the mistake I made, guys, was that I had the star in front. I needed to make an attribute bind and then pass to 0, and then therefore that template was then acting as if it was a star, right? So that's why I knew that that's how it worked. I just couldn't remember the syntax for it. But yeah, so there you go, guys. So that's it for structured directives. There's only really 3. There's a few more that you can use that are conditional. So the other one that you could probably look at, which isn't really structural, but it's interesting. It's more of an attribute type class. So you can come in and go ngClass. In fact, I'm just going to quickly use the snippet here because I'm lazy. And then you can use the class expression. So you can specify the name of the class. You go active here, and then go. We'll go not hide. What is it? Hide hello message. In fact, what I might do is I'll call this. I'm not using Bootstrap here. Anyway, it doesn't matter because we can just look at the class on the div, and then here you can go inactive is hide hello message button. Now we're never going to see the hello message. Oh no, we will in this case because we're just using an empty class. Just close that and put in here. This div toggles a class based on the checkbox above. Right. So by rights, we can have it set to active initially, then when I click it, it's going to go inactive. So let's have a look at that. Again, this is not structural directives. We can see that it's loaded here. Let's just quickly check the inspector. And we can see class active, right? And then if I come up and I click here, it becomes inactive, right? So it's still using the conditional behavior of a class. Now, you've seen other ways to do this, so you can just go class.active, but what that does is it only allows you to bind to one property. ngClass allows you to toggle properties based on different states. So it still has a purpose. You would have seen ngClass in Angular 1, and it would have been like this. And people would have used it even for one toggle state, where attribute binding for Angular 2 allows you to go class.active, and then you can toggle to one particular state. But because this is 2 states, we still use this ngClass way of doing it. And there might be times where you want to do that, like based on some action, you want to toggle something active or inactive. You know, that's a pretty standard way to do this. But it's not structural. Even though it does change the behavior, it still comes under attribute binding. And attribute binding itself is actually a directive. So this is actually a attribute directive, which just changes the behavior of an element. And then a component itself is another directive, which is it displays a template. It's a template directive, so to speak. These ones are more just changing the state of a little bit of the DOM based on a condition, but it's not a full-blown component. So that's it, guys. That's all I wanted to mention. In the next video, I will go back to dynamic forms because now we know this little piece of information, so it should help us with our toggling of switch cases and stuff based on different types, as well as the ifs if we need them necessarily. We have ngFors for our form fields that we'll have in the form. So we'll pretty much use all 3 of these, I believe, in the next video. So that's why I want to do it now. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.